The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system. Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election.
The president hasn't said that Russia didn't meddle. What he's saying is it didn't have an impact, and it certainly wasn't with help from the Trump campaign. It's very clear that Russia meddled in the election.
Using social media posts and ads, organized political rallies, and fictitious American persons to denigrate Hillary Clinton, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio, and to support Bernie Sanders, Green Party candidate Jill Stein, and then candidate Donald Trump.
What we have got to say to the Russians, you are doing something to undermine American democracy. You are not going to get away with it. This is a major assault. If you do that, there will be severe, severe consequences.
Putin is basically using lies to divide us and poison our democracy. When the President of the United States does not react to a clear and present danger, then he's violating his oath of office.
Direct attack on the United States by Russia. And because Donald Trump lives either in fear of Russia or in service to Russia, or both, Donald Trump continues to do absolutely nothing in response to the Russian attack.
We just heard the intelligence chief say the Russians are going after the 2018 election. They're out there all the time. They're taking advantage of the Parkland shooting. They're taking advantage of the release of the memo hashtag. They are attacking us all the time, and Trump refuses to do anything about it. We need an 11/8 commission like we had a 9/11 commission after the 2001 attack.
Very serious attack against the United States by a hostile foreign power, an attack against our election process, our entire governing process. Imagine if FDR had denied that the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor and didn't react. That's the equivalent.
It's wild. I mean, this indictment today was wild. I mean, they were organizing all sorts of things. They were working for that Jill Stein, trying to help her.
They call their big overall program disinformation.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably. But it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over.
We don't do that now, though. We don't mess around other people's elections,
Democrats nominated Hillary Clinton, who already lost to Barack Obama 8 years earlier, and half the country on no circumstance would vote for. And they lost to an orange clown game show host, and then they blamed another country.
It's of my personal belief that it isn't all of that effective. You know, it's essentially a social media marketing campaign with 90 people, a couple $1 million, a few $1 million behind it, run by people who have a bare grasp of the English language and not a full understanding of who they're targeting, what they're targeting. I think that the paranoia aspect, the idea that there is this, kind of all-powerful, immense propaganda machine that's going on, and that anybody who's tweeting something that you don't like or is, kind of causing trouble on the internet can be chalked up to Russia. That is a very powerful thing that's going on and is really increasing now, I think, in the wake of these indictments in kind of a worrying way.
Well, first of all, this indictment tells us how thin Mueller's evidence is. It's an indictment of 13 employees of a troll farm in St. Petersburg run by a literal hot dog salesman who has no established or proven connection to Russian intelligence or the Russian government. It was an extremely sloppy operation. It has even been identified in the Mueller indictment, as you said, as a at least partly commercial operation. Bernie Sanders himself is experiencing blowback for feeding into the Russiagate narrative. He's constantly parroting this very narrative that's being turned on him. Jill Stein is also under attack again now. There's an effort in undermining Black Lives Matter by tying them to a Russian influence operation. Everyone on the left has to be extremely aware of what's happening here, just as in the old Cold War. A new Cold War will embolden the most militaristic actors in our society and marginalize everyone on the left by design. With this Mueller indictment, we are seeing that scenario play out in an extremely terrifying fashion with very little pushback.
Welcome to Around the Empire, the show that takes you around the U.S. empire. I'm your host, Dan Wright.
I'm your host, Joanne Leon.
And on today's episode, February 23rd, 2018, we discuss the Mueller indictments and whether Twitter trolls truly rule the world. So, I guess this last week, special prosecutor Mueller indicted, 13 Russians, including the ringleader, a former hot dog salesman turned apparatchik for the Russian government, reportedly, for basically putting together terrible ads on Facebook that I don't think convinced anyone of anything. One was a gay pride Bernie Sanders ad that's making the rounds as a meme.
Buff Bernie.
Buff Bernie, right. And
the coloring book.
And as one Facebook executive said, 56% of them were done after the election and had little to no role in the election. His name was Mr. Goldman. But nonetheless, despite the fact that few people who actually know anything about this take this very seriously, and anyone who's used social media, at least as I have and most people have, understands how utterly ineffective these ads would have been in swinging votes. The mainstream media had a total meltdown. And with some people comparing this, in Max Booth's case, he compared it to 9/11. And in one representative, Gerald Nadler of New York, compared it to Pearl Harbor. So now we live in a world where shit posting on Twitter is the equivalent of 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. What do you think, Joanne?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I'm pretty amazed. I see the war party, a euphoric war party, the left and the right coming together with, identical talking points about how this is an attack on America by Russia. This is undermining our democracy and ruining our country. And as Bernie Sanders said, it deserves severe, severe consequences.
For the billionaires and millionaires.
Yeah.
Buff Bernie to the rescue.
Yeah. The only difference on the right and the left now is that the right are saying, but there's no collusion, but Trump didn't collude with this. But yeah, Russia attacked us, and it's crazy. I've got a lot of audio clips and stuff to go through. I don't know if you want to.
Well, let's just start at what is being accused here. So
I have actually Rosenstein's laying out the charges.
Okay, go for it.
So first, I cut out some in the middle, but here's Rosenstein introducing. First things he says.
A grand jury in the District of Columbia today returned an indictment presented by the Special Counsel's Office. The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system, including the 2016 presidential election. The defendants allegedly conducted what they called information warfare against the United States, with the stated goal of spreading distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general. According to the allegations in the indictment, 12 of the individual defendants worked at various times for a company called Internet Research Agency, LLC, a Russian company based in St. Petersburg. The other individual defendant, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin, funded the conspiracy through companies known as Concord Management and Consulting, LLC, Concord Catering, and many affiliates.
Catering.
The conspiracy was part of a larger operation called Project Lakta. Project Lakta included multiple components, some involving domestic audiences within the Russian Federation, and others targeting foreign audiences in multiple countries.
Yeah, when Dan called this guy, Yevgeny, sorry, I can't remember his last name, a hot dog salesman, he was only half kidding, right? He did have a catering company, and apparently he created the Internet Research Agency to basically go in and post positive, to post negative information about his company. And
it's like a commercial bots. On Twitter, there's a lot of bots. And all nefarious purposes. Most of the bots on Twitter are advertising bots to promote AT&T or Domino's Pizza. And a lot of what he did, and which is different in Russia, here we call it sort of the comments section, is they paid people to say good things about his business, which, by the way, a lot of bots do. They say good things, or they counteract.
A lot about products. You can tell.
This is a good, or like, people they pay people to edit their Wikipedia page so that they look better. I know there's someone who had a business doing that. They pay to have good comments on Amazon for someone's book that they're promoting. This is all guerrilla marketing. Yeah, it's
so common on Amazon that they implemented a feature that shows whether or not that user actually purchased that product.
Right. I mean, it's so
you see them in local restaurants. You see the bot comments all the time. They always, they're always tearing down their competitors. It's pretty funny. And then there's the ones about, the positive ones. The service was great, and they're like, it's like a formula,
This is guerrilla marketing agency. I mean, the internet. It's not a government. It's not a Russian government agency. It's. I mean, I even don't. I gotta tell you, my view on this. Even if they were doing what they claimed they were doing, I just don't care. It's just not important. It just didn't have any effect on the election. Putting out Buff Bernie or other ads, or even the intention of putting out fine, who cares? There's the idea that this is an attack on the political system, or that they created the polarization in the American population. I mean, it's such a scapegoating. It's such transparent scapegoating by a corrupt establishment in Washington. This is, we're not, people aren't unhappy with us. It's these foreign agents creating these problems, which, by the way, the irony of all this is that's a Putin tactic to blame every, problem with Russia on the United States. An outsider. This is very Putinistic.
No, I don't think it's just irony. Putin. I think it's like a tactic as old as history itself.
No, but I'm saying that's the irony of it is this is what Putin would do. He would blame internal problems on external enemies, which is exactly what the Washington establishment is trying to do here. I got to tell you, if this is what they've got for Russian meddling, quote unquote, they don't got it.
Yeah. And again, that same talk between Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal, two of the very few, in my opinion, sane voices on this topic. He brings that up too. I'll play you a little clip of that later. But here's the rest of Rosenstein talking. He lays out the charges, and then he gives his disclaimer at the very end, where he says it didn't have any impact on the election and it wasn't collusion and no American,
criminal indictments. No, that didn't matter though.
But he's like very smiling and excited in the beginning. Like he's really happy about this thing, which of course he's responsible for appointing Mueller. So anyway, here goes Rosenstein again.
The indictment includes 8 criminal counts. Count 1 alleges a criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States by all of the defendants. The defendants allegedly conspired to defraud America by impairing the lawful functions of the Federal Election Commission, the United States Department of Justice.
What the fuck?
Those organizations of the U.S. government are responsible for administering federal requirements for disclosure of foreign involvement in certain domestic activities.
Oh, I see.
Count 2 charges conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bank fraud by Internet Research Agency and 2 of the individual defendants. Counts 3 through 8 charge aggravated identity theft by Internet Research Agency and 4 individuals. Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election. I want to caution you that everyone charged with a crime is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. At trial, prosecutors must introduce credible evidence that is sufficient to prove each defendant guilty beyond any reasonable doubt to a unanimous jury.
And this will never go to court. And grand juries will indict a ham sandwich. But
wait. Let's just stop right here before we go forward into the elections. This guy's saying that the charge here is they defrauded the Federal Election Commission by not disclosing that they were foreign agents. I mean, this is like the weakest roaster. I mean, just as a criminal charge, this is ridiculous. I mean, the Federal Election Commission is a total joke for people who don't know.
Still paralyzed, isn't it?
Yeah, it's because it's partisan split. There's no real rules. The Supreme Court gutted its authority with Citizens United. Like, defrauding the Federal Election Commission by not registering as I mean, it's like this is such a bizarro, ridiculous charge that may technically make sense, but it's like, as this is like a criminal charge, you defrauded the Federal Election Commission from doing what?
Well, I would actually
They don't do anything. They don't do a damn thing.
I'd love to see them pursue this line of inquiry further. If we're going to talk about foreign influence on our elections, hey, let's go all the way.
Yeah, Israel. Are we going to think about Netanyahu?
Saudi Arabia,
Saudi Arabia. Oh,
they
big
own
one.
pieces of news organizations and think tank. Well, I don't know if they own pieces
think
of
tanks. Oh, yes, they do.
And they own, the
Brookings Institution
is like the second biggest shareholder in Twitter, and
Fox News.
Yeah, I mean, so.
Yeah, how about Al Jazeera? Of course, they are actually going after Al Jazeera now. They're trying to get them to register as foreign agents after they said they were spying on, I don't know, Israelis or something. But so this is slippery slope is already happening. But
and just to mention too, Facebook deleted Telesaur's account.
Oh, you see, we're here already.
Yeah, we're getting this is
foreign meddlers.
So obvious where this is going. Only dissenting foreign meddlers, though.
Oh yeah, I guess. I mean, they're trying. Let's be clear. They found a way in. They've tried everything else to find some way to control the internet. SOPA. They've tried everything, and now through xenophobia and Trump, they've found some way to get a foothold. Whether it lasts or not is another story. But like this is, they finally. I mean, the great thing is they've exposed themselves as how illiberal they actually are. But on the other hand, it's a problem. They've also deleted. I mean, now you see Medium deleting people's accounts for quote unquote conspiracy theory, the most specious charge ever. YouTube, I mean, in some cases, there's people who probably are conspiracy theorists, but I'm just saying, like, well, they're just going to delete them from the whole platform. Right. They're deplatforming their opposition.
Of course. I mean, we knew that open forum was not going to stay that way, right? I mean, we always knew that they were going to come for it, but it's just very interesting the way they do it. It's the 9/11 template, the lead up to the Iraq War template. It worked before, they're doing it again. And supposedly, I mean, if you trust polls I'm not sure who did this poll, but if it's a poll by a news agency, I don't understand why I would trust the polls of a news agency that I don't believe a damn word they say. But anyway, a polling organization said that 82% of Democrats basically are all in on Russiagate.
Of course, they've been bombarded. They've been psychologically tortured with Russiagate for weeks, and it's so satisfying because it explains why they lost.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know how you can not think of, who was it? A former Nazi when he was in jail during an interview.
Goering,
right. So Goering, while he's, I guess a psychologist, interviewed him in jail or something like that.
Yeah, Army psychologist. I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and so he says, quote, "Why, of course the people don't want war. Why would some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war when the best that he can get out of it is to come back to his farm in one piece? Naturally, the common people don't war, neither in Russia, nor in England, nor in America, nor for that matter in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it's the leaders of a country who determine the policy, and it's always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it's a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they're being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same way in any country."
Man, right on the nose.
Hermann Göring, as told to Gustav Gilbert during the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah, the Army psychologist, right? Yeah, he has a great that's a lot. There's a lot of great stuff in there. It's kind of that's a great. That psychologist did remember all sorts of. I mean, a side note completely, but that psychologist did interviews with all the Nuremberg accused, and he has all these really interesting insights, including the people who got off. Because remember, the banker, Hitler's banker, Schock, who had the highest IQ test apparently, and had all these other things that he interviewed, he got off scot-free, and so did a bunch of other collaborators because they weren't technically the leadership. So it's actually really interesting.
Well, they were friends of Dulles or what?
No, those people didn't even get arrested. Those people came over clandestinely, but some of the international finance people, including Hajmar Schock, got off scot-free. But there's lots of interesting stuff there. But yeah, that point for Goering, right? I mean, it's the same. I mean, this is what we've been attacked.
Yeah. I mean, tell me that this is not what's happening. Convince me that that's not what's happening right now. That what we are seeing right now is, a unification among the establishment and the war party, who are
right. But to what end? What do they want besides the budget? I mean, that's the thing. Well, you have to ask, what's the main agenda here driving towards, or is it just simply, establishment panic over the election of Trump? And in the Democrats' case, we know what their agenda is. Their agenda is to make sure the party doesn't go left. And instead of having their own autopsy like the Republicans did after they lost in 2012, or I forget what year it was. I think it was 2012 after Mitt Romney lost. They did an autopsy and they said, we need to do this, this, and this. Now, in fairness, all the things they said they were going to do, they didn't do. But the Democrats, instead of doing an autopsy and figuring out why they lost all these things, they're just basically saying, we didn't fail at all. It's Russia's fault.
Yep.
And that's their agenda. I just wonder and the neocons have their own agenda because they want, tension with Russia, and they want to justify their existence in the think tanks that are funded by the arms industry, which needs Russia because the arms industry, Al-Qaeda doesn't justify the F-35. So there's various different people coalescing around this narrative because they have their different. What's unfortunate is the only holdouts were some of the more powerful mainstream Republican media outlets who were opposing it, not because they oppose neocons really, and not because they're interested in helping the Democrats excuse their electoral defeat because they want to open the door for leftists, but because it was hurting Trump. And now what's changed is they've kind of found a way to both shill for Trump and get on board with Russiagate. And that's an unfortunate development because they were the only people powerful enough to push back on the narrative.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And I mean, this is pure speculation, but I mean, it reeks of some kind of a deal been made. Like, all right, you don't nail us on this and we won't nail you on that or whatever. Because this Russiagate was really stumbling along. It looked like it was going to go under after Memogate, right? After the FISA abuse of the FISA courts, information came out, and Nunes made it very clear that was just phase one. There was a carefully laid out plan to expose what the Democrats and the intelligence agencies and the FBI had done to, I don't know what you call it, to not Trump. Allow Trump to take the presidency first. That was their first aim. And after that, it was to just sabotage his presidency, right? This is clear. And
what they didn't anticipate was Trump doesn't really have that much of an agenda to sabotage. He's just kind of there breaking shit. And so, I think they actually thought, I think some of them really, and convinced themselves, gaslit themselves almost into thinking that he was really going to, offer this big rapprochement with Russia, which I really question how real that was. But that's bad for a lot of people in Washington. Washington still needs tension with Russia. And they still need NATO, which is for people who don't understand, this has nothing to do with security. It's a big money-making operation. NATO is the arms market. You have to sell these planes and these tanks and these, yes, you can sell to the American military. That's a big market. Yes, you can sell to some Saudi Arabia, which has a huge checkbook for this stuff. But the European market is a big arms market. And breaking up NATO, which Trump kind of suggested would happen, even though it's a very rational policy because the Cold War, is over, that's really bad for them. And it's also bad for the slew of analysts and think tankers who are all Russia experts from the Cold War. I mean, these people were irrelevant in Washington a few years ago, right? Russia, people had the Obama position, which was, Mitt Romney, you're totally out of touch talking about Russia. Then we got to talk about Al-Qaeda. So Russiagate has there's a lot of people cynically benefiting from Russiagate who may or may not believe it or have an interest in hyping the most banal crap. I mean, I would love to see what China did during the election meddling. I would love to see what Israeli intelligence is doing online right now. They have their whole unit set up for, quote, Hasbara, which is, promoting Israel and their position. I would love to see what Saudis are doing. I know sometimes when I've attacked Saudi Arabia on Twitter, I've gotten pushback from very weird people saying very weird shit in very bad English.
Yes,
I'm like, who the fuck is this? It's like somebody's probably from the Saudi government or some third-party contractor paid by the Saudis to make sure their social media image doesn't get banged up. So who else is this?
They're notoriously have big contracts with PR firms for numerous reasons.
Right. Now, by the way, let me be very clear. I don't think anybody should be in trouble for that. I think it's obnoxious and sometimes funny because the English is so broken. I don't think they're doing anything inappropriate. I think people should register with FARA. But it's like, it's not 9/11. I mean, to invoke 9/11 as Max Boot did is so disgusting. I mean, it's such a betrayal of the people who actually were killed on 9/11 to invoke that with, people shit posting on Twitter or running Facebook ads that nobody even understood this is it's so dishonest. So I don't think anybody should go to jail for it. I don't think it's, when some Saudi paid flag hits me for saying something about Saudi censorship, I don't think I'm being attacked in a global sense. I don't feel like I've been victimized.
Well, it's nothing unusual. I mean, it's just life on the internet too.
It's just an opinion.
Yeah.
It's just a stupid ad with Bernie posing as a muscular pro-LGBT. I mean, it's just so. I think we are they don't have it, and they feel like maybe if they bang the table, there's three. When you're a lawyer, if you have the facts on your side, you argue the facts. If you have the law on your side, you argue the law, and if you have neither the facts nor the law, you bang the table. Yeah. And that's what they're doing with Russiagate right now. They don't have the facts, they don't have the law. They're just going to bang the table enough to scare people, hopefully. And maybe it's working, maybe it's not. I don't know.
It appears to be working.
It appears to be
from the polls. Yeah, but I also have some, anecdotal personal experience with people around me who think there's something to it. Because the lie is so big.
And because it won't stop. It keeps going on and on every month because Trump's an idiot and Jeff Sessions is a grade A moron. They're letting this thing just drain on and on and on. And the one thing I would be hopeful for is finally some people, just like the Nunes memo, suddenly people in the Republican Party say, I don't want to talk about Russiagate when I'm up for re-election. Wrap it the fuck up. Wrap it up. Tell Mueller to wrap it up. And if he doesn't wrap it up, we're going to start sabotaging you again. And I mean, they have to put their foot down and say, wrap it up.
Yeah,
that's the only, and they might do it for their own partisan self-interest, but at least it'll end it. I think that's why it's still around, is because they keep finding ways to keep the fire burning because they have this special prosecutor out there like Ken Starr, who's just there to make trouble.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people are banking on it. Like you hinted at earlier about whose interest is this. Well, I think the ones who are really keeping it going are the intelligence agencies and the media,
well,
whatever intersection there is there. And the Democrats, are on for the ride because they have a common goal of, trying to save their reputation, trying to keep the left from encroaching on the centrists and the neocon influence on the party, stranglehold on the party. But I also think that they're terrified that they're going to get caught doing the stuff they did during the primary and, after the election. I mean, I never saw anything like that in my life.
Trust me, if the Republicans do not lose in 2018, if they somehow keep the House, which is possible through gerrymandering, and the Senate's looking tough, there's going to be another stage 4 freak out. Because this is all about getting they want one of the houses, and therefore they can start really putting pressure and save. There's an alignment to have that happen. If that doesn't happen, it's going to be amazing. Like you're going to see, you're seeing apocalyptic rhetoric now.
I don't know what they'll do.
They'll totally lose it. So who knows what's going to happen in 2018? I just am amazed that the Republicans will not shut this thing down. And that was the one thing I was kind of like, oh, well, God, how long is this going to go on? Aren't they going to shut it down at some point? They got 2018 coming up, but they're such fools that they can't even see their self-interest. So I think that's, we're in late February now. I mean, how long are you going to – you want this to be about – by the way, one Democrat actually came out and said to Mueller, Mueller can't end this before the election.
We have to protect Mueller. They say it all the time.
No. But he doesn't want the report to come out before the election because he doesn't want it to influence the election, meaning without Mueller hanging over the head.
Don't have to say that in public?
Yeah, he was really – it was a misstep.
I got to find that. I got to find that clip.
Yeah. So – it's a misstep, but you understand the logic. It was just like I don't understand. The Republicans can't see this. They don't understand that underlying all this is partisan.
They bet everything on it, Dan. They bet everything on it.
Yeah, and all they have is like 13 people shit posting on Twitter. Like, where's the conspiracy? Where's the corruption? Where's the Trump's businesses have debt and like doesn't prove anything. Trump doesn't pay. Trump doesn't care that he owes people money. He screws people who he owes money to all the time.
It's never going to court, Dan. It's never going to court.
Yeah.
The case is being tried in the court of public opinion, and the whole. I mean, from this again, my opinion, but they were behind the eight ball when the Memogate thing started, and it was going to be a systematic exposure, extremely partisan. But with lots of fact-based stuff in it, a systematic disclosure of everything that the Democrats and their allies in the DOJ, in the FBI, and in the CIA, what they did during the election, which come down to some serious charges if anyone ever actually got held accountable in Washington, which they don't. But, it would still ruin their careers.
Right. And I mean, Susan Rice's lawyer responded today that, there is because she apparently kept notes of some meeting that happened. And he's saying, well, there's no real notes about the meeting. You don't need this. Because Grassley and Graham have actually both asked, Lindsey Graham and Charles Grassley, Republican senators, wanted the notes on this meeting. And the lawyer was, well, there wasn't really any real notes.
Yeah, because they got caught in a catch-22, something Comey's testimony and disclosures to Congress. And never mention anything about that meeting or something like that. I think specifically asked.
Right. I mean, you have to put it this way. They've checkmated themselves because on the one hand, they're saying Russia's attacking us and we were very responsive to that. And on the other hand, they're saying, oh, we didn't have any meetings about the Russia-Trump thing. Yeah. That's not our – what I mean? Like it doesn't actually make sense. Either they were aware of this attack and all the intelligence agencies are in agreement and it was a major serious attack – and they were all in on it and briefed, or there wasn't an attack and therefore there was no collusion to stop Trump from. It doesn't make sense. Either they were you would have to believe that the intelligence agencies are completely apolitical, and all these political appointees had political machinations. Like Susan Rice, a hardcore partisan hack, John Brennan, a hardcore partisan hack. All the people in the Obama orbit who didn't want to see Trump win. Obama was campaigning against Trump openly with Hillary at the time, right? He was out there campaigning. Nothing inappropriate about that. But you'd have to believe that all these people saw this information and made no political judgments and had no political response.
Didn't abuse their power.
Didn't abuse it. Well, then it's not even an abuse. They didn't take any political strategy away from it. I mean, it's ridiculous. Oh, no, we just serve the Republic. I swore no to the Constitution. I didn't care that someone who believed was an existential threat to the country was going to do this. I mean, I just think it's laughable. And so I agree. The longer this goes, if the longer this goes on, the more we're going to find out about, Democrats acting like Democrats and Republicans acting like Republicans. I'm sure if the Republicans were in power and they saw this, they would have used it against the Democrats. And I'm sure that the Democrats, absolutely, John Brennan in particular, of course, they saw this information. They said, how can we help Hillary? How can we audition for a job in the Hillary White House? Remember, they all think, they all think she's going to win.
Yeah, exactly.
They all think she's going to win.
Probably kind of sloppy and then panicked. And don't forget that Brandon wasn't having he was not in good shape at the time, right? Because he was also losing Aleppo at the time. And, the Syrian war was his baby. And
and Mike Flynn had probably helped screw up his war by publishing that DIA memo, right?
The 2012 DIA, yeah. Yep.
So I mean, they have every reason in the world to engage in the kind of political gamesmanship that they're being accused of. Like, I have no doubt that they did it. Not that it's that inappropriate, but it's just kind of saying, like, we need to start cutting the crap here, guys. This Russia thing's been blown way out of proportion. I'm sure there was some shit posting going on Facebook and Twitter. No one's denying that. Bernie Sanders, Buff Bernie. But this is not an attack on the level of 9/11 in Pearl Harbor, and you should really be ashamed of yourself for comparing it to events where people were violently murdered.
Yeah, but nobody's going to climb down that ladder, that escalation ladder. They're not.
Where are they going to go from here, though? Not what's worse than 9/11.
Well, when they used 9/11 to do things like this, where did that lead? It led to a major war.
I think Max Boot looks ridiculous with that comparison. I actually think I think he went too far. I think he actually looked ridiculous. That's my view. I know you're more pessimistic on this than I am.
I'm not necessarily I'm fearful. I'm I can laugh about it and everything too. I see the absurdity. It's to the point of surreal. It's extremely embarrassing that we're doing this for, reasons that a lot of people have laid out, particularly the fact of the hypocrisy of it, and hypocrisy on a scale that's like off the charts. But I am truly fearful that there's a war coming deliberately, because the other thing that's going on, the much bigger scenario that's going on is the decline of the empire. And, I take them seriously when, John McCain gives those speeches about how this, world order that they're trying to maintain, they come right out and say these things, that they'll do just about anything to be, avoid being taken down from the...
but the writing's on the wall, isn't it?
It is, yes. But that doesn't mean they can't destroy us in the process. I mean, it's happened.
Yeah, but who are they going to fight? I mean, here's the thing. I mean, this is the only positive thing with Trump, which is the one thing I kind of always thought. We talked about this with Trump, which is that Trump was going to destroy the empire, just not on purpose. Right? We've talked about this a few times. They can't help themselves but attack Trump because he offends them culturally so much. They're destroying the empire by attack. He's the president. You can hate Trump. You can love Trump. I guess you can love Trump. But at the end of the day, he's the president. When they attack him, they're attacking the emperor. And that's what, by the way, I think makes them doubly furious. That he's in that chair, and they know that when they attack him, they're undermining the office itself, because the office and the man are one and the same. That's always been that's how empires work. That's how it worked in Rome. That's how it works now. British Empire, he's the guy, he is the emperor in our system. And so by undermining him, they, on the one hand, are doing it because they just really want someone else to be there and run the empire right. But the effect of it is to undermine the empire generally, because it reminds everyone how tenuous it is to have an empire where one person has this much power. And if you get rid of that, you get rid of the empire. I mean, you can't have it's really hard to have a democratically run empire in the sense that there's no one central figure in charge. So I think they're actually upset because they hate Trump, but they know attacking him is in a way attacking the institution of the presidency. And that is undermining the empire, because Trump, I mean, if you're Europe right now, you are figuring out, and this is what Germany and France and everybody else, is you're going to have your own foreign policy now. You cannot rely on the United States because the United States political system is too volatile and unpredictable, and you can't trust the U.S., which I think is a good thing.
Well, I think they have felt that way for quite a while, and now they have an opening. They have a loathsome
They have no
creature.
choice.
Yeah, I think they jumped on this opportunity to say a lot of things that they couldn't say before.
Well, no, now they have to chart their own course. That's what they didn't want to do. They wanted to have us. I mean, that's the one thing Trump kind of said that was kind of true, which was, they don't pay for NATO because NATO is a joke. But on the other hand, it's like
the free ride. Yeah.
The free ride thing is kind of true.
Yeah, that's a complex argument, but I think
they've got to have their own council now, right? They've got to have their own destiny because they can't trust the American empire. So Trump is undermining it. And when his critics attack him as unhinged, they attack him as unhinged man with nuclear weapons, if I'm any other country in the world, I just go, geez, do I really want to be at the whims of a country that has nuclear weapons, that has unhinged people? I just think they don't want to do this, but they're undermining the imperial project by continually showing how weak and tenuous it is when you have the quote unquote bad emperor problem.
Right.
What's to stop another Trump from becoming elected president?
At this point, nothing. Because no fundamental changes are being made because they're casting all the blame on an external so-called enemy.
Right. So but I mean, internationally, you have to say the U.S. is just a broken political system, and these people are showing how broken it is. They're probably showing it because they want David Frums of the world are constantly lashing out at how broken the American political system is. On the one hand, they're probably doing it because they want to restore it to its imperial greatness. But the actual effect of that is to just to have everyone see that you're pointing out how broken the American political system is.
And there are some people who, they still need to get some things done. They're like a younger sibling with a bunch of big, muscly older brothers, and they go around picking on other kids because they can just then call their big brothers to go beat them up if they do anything.
Yeah, well, guess what? Big Brother is I
don't like to use that term because I don't mean Big Brother in the Orwell sense. I mean Big Brother,
right?
Big Brother who sticks up for you no matter what you do, and you become a little jerk because of it.
You become Saudi Arabia, you become Israel, you become other countries that rely on U.S. But here's the thing: Trump is so polarizing and upsetting to so many people around the world that it's hard to. Obama was kind of a perfect imperial president because he was so genteel and competent in some sense.
He was a great con man. He really was.
He was a great salesman. He was, he won his campaign, won Advertiser of the Year in 2008. And, he knew that. He was a former, guy, Business International, all the rest of it. Trump is not. Trump is so blunt that he you kind of see the guts of the U.S. empire when you see Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a very ugly – it's one thing to know that the U.S. is an empire. It's another thing to see the sausage get made right in front of you when you have some blustering, blowhard talking about our strength.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that whole thing. They just don't like him because he's, uncouth.
He can't sell the empire.
I think there's way more to it than that. I think that it is such a corrupt system right now with so many skeletons in the closet that it takes some serious talent to keep all that under wraps. And I think they were afraid that he would intentionally and or unintentionally, expose some of the big, big, big crimes, you could say, and corruption that's there. I mean, you know how it is with a lie, right? You tell a lie and then you have to lie about the lie. And then it becomes layers of lies. You got to keep track of all your other lies. That's kind of what this empire and probably any empire is right now. And so you need a very competent con man at the top who you can really trust to keep that all working. I think we're saying the same thing to some extent, but I think there are a lot of people who really fear being exposed for the things that they've done because they've done some really big things and still are.
Well, actually, interesting that you mentioned that, and we talk about that in this context is that one of the things that a lot of people missed in the media, but I picked up on it, I saw because I follow, I guess, some interesting Twitter accounts, is former NSA employees worried that because we, the U.S. government, indicted Russian information warfare people, Russia would retaliate by indicting NSA employees who had engaged in espionage against Russia.
That Tau group or whatever that group is.
The TOS. And that the tailored operations, whatever.
Yeah,
but also
yeah.
just general cyber, whatever. Just people who worked at the Cyber Command in, Maryland? And
Fort Meade, yeah.
And that they would be indicted and unable to travel. Because remember, Russia has access to Interpol. They can indict Americans who engage in cyber warfare against Russia, just like America can do it against Russians. And people might not be able to travel. And they're saying, one of the NSA guys, so I read his article, I'll find it and we'll put it in the links, said, where there's no protection for us. They hired us to do this job, to do cyber operations, to do information warfare, to hack into things. And there's no legal protection for us if we get indicted by Russia or China or anywhere else.
Are they contractors?
No, these are people in Fort Meade who are in a uniform or are NSA employees, and they are engaging in crimes, technically, under international law by intruding into other people's cyber systems, and they are liable for indictment. And what a lot of the NSA people thought was, well, we have an unspoken agreement that this is espionage, that this is spy work, and we're not going to indict theirs, and they're not going to indict ours. It'll just be like the Cold War.
And everybody does it kind of thing.
And everybody does it kind of thing. And now Mueller is changing the rules.
Oh, yeah. I see where they're going with that. Yeah, because, that did happen to some CIA. I think they were employees of the CIA. They did get, I think they're still under indictment, aren't they? Is it in Italy?
Absolutely. And this indictment is actually really bad news for people who have actually worked for the U.S. government, either directly or indirectly, because they are now liable for indictment. So watch this space. Watch what happens if Russia retaliates, because Russia knows who they are.
Yeah,
it's a secret. They work at Fort Meade. They're not secret, or they work as a third-party contractor. The Russians know who they are, and what's to stop them from retaliating by indicting them?
Yeah, I don't know how much power they have in the different international courts, but yeah, they do business with a lot of people. I don't think they're nearly as powerless as some people portray them, But yeah, it's a problem. My view on this is that there are tells in the media, and the Memogate thing really shook I don't want to call it the Democrats, because it's not just the Democrats. It's the Democrats and the intelligence agencies, the anti-Trump. You could say that the anti-Trump movement, you could tell that they were really shaken after Memogate happened. And then Mueller slapped these indictments within, a month. And it resurrected Russiagate. And by the way, there were some people working pretty hard. We should have foreseen that they were going to pull out the big guns to resurrect and prop up Russiagate. Because, for example, you had Jim Risen with that, in my view, bizarre take of his. We saw some big guns. They were some serious fight back. And a different class of operator. There were some pretty clownish up to this point. You had the Adam Schiffs and all them. And Brennan is not particularly effective on his own, and Clapper, Comey. But when you start bringing out people like Jim Risen, you get him to ramp up Russiagate again. That's a whole nother level. And
that article, I think that article was genuinely dumb. And I think it was also part of the internal politics of The Intercept, which is that Glenn Greenwald, who I think has been eminently reasonable in this whole thing, has been getting pushback from all sorts of partisan hacks, including people who used to work for The Intercept, saying, you're taking a ridiculous line on Russia and you're not doing enough to, what about Reality Winner, da, da, da. And so the person, which is the woman who leaked that some of the internal memorandum and is now in prison.
It got burned by the Intercept writers who wrote about it.
Protect her. They didn't protect anything, which is
essentially just handed her right over to the.
Yeah, they essentially printed evidence that confirmed it was her that leaked it and got her. Which is bad if you were thinking about being a source for the Intercept.
Well, that's supposedly how she got added, but yeah, even right.
Well, I mean, I think
she was exposed one way or another. She was
exposed. Well, she was exposed by the Intercept, but that they may have had her before that. How about that?
I'm good with that
because they put out paper that kind of showed where it was printed from. In any case, I kind of feel like that was the pressure on the Intercept to put something out there. But Jim's Rise looks like an idiot. I mean, it's just ridiculous rhetoric and insult to injury. The New York Times, his old employer, who he publicly crapped on at the Intercept, kind of dunked on him by releasing dunked on him earlier than the Trump's a traitor thing by
just hours, I think.
Yeah, just hours that undermined his entire story. I mean, it looks so vindictive.
He claims that story pretty much says the same thing as his. If you listen to the interview, there was an interview.
Yeah, but it's not really. I read both stories, and I think the New York Times one pretty well on him. But in any case, I mean, it's just a ridiculous take, but I think the Intercept kind of felt pressured to do something like that, so they at least can say, well, there's a diversity of views on Russiagate. But it's a genuinely
But Jim Rison is supposedly a person who can't be pressured by his employer. In fact, they laid the groundwork before
No.
He
may believe it. He may believe it. I'm saying they published it because it was so anti-Glenn position. I mean, it takes, and plus it uses words that are so foreign to the Intercept's seeming worldview, right? Like traitor.
You think they're undermining Glenn from within, like?
No, I just think I think what the Intercept does, from my perspective on it, and it could be wrong. I'm not on the inside. I know a few people who write there, but I'm not on the inside at all. Is that they get pressure, and then they do something to kind of balance it out.
Yeah,
like
to maintain their credibility.
Right, to maintain their credibility because they're so.
I think that's an old left gatekeeper game, to be honest. Like with the foundation-funded organizations, things like that. You have your people.
They're a little farther out to the left. I agree that the line they've taken on certain things is ridiculous, and I kind of feel like they do it because they want to. But they've kind of staked out the most antagonistic position. But I agree they didn't need to do the Rison piece, and I think it actually undermines a lot of what they're trying to do because it's such inflammatory crap.
And Rison, just before that, he published this whole thing to establish his creds with the dissident left or independence or whatever. Like this guy, believe him. He was suppressed by the New York Times and all that stuff, and they laid that groundwork first, and then he comes out with the Russiagate stuff. I personally was shocked. I was shaken by that. I mean, I've got Rison's books on my shelf. Same with Scahill. They were.
It was the logic of it too. It wasn't the reporting. It was like this really stupid view.
There are very few establishment people who I trust and look up to, and the two of them were.
Yeah, it was like Trump. It's funny is that it was Trump style nationalism. Like, you've undermined the CIA and the FBI.
It was shocking in so many ways. Yeah.
I guess maybe it was also. Just to speculate on Rison's own motivations. Maybe he wants people in the CIA and FBI to talk to him. It was like source cultivation by proxy, but in either way, it's easily the dumbest thing I've read on the Intercept.
Well, the other thing would make sense is that there is a deep state war going on. There are major factions within the intelligence agencies, and that he's aligned with one of them and not the other. I mean, there are a lot of indicators of that.
Yeah, I don't think that he's aligned by that.
Huh?
I think there's factions within the deep state. I mean, there's always been factions. Remember, people forget this, but Watergate, an actual gate, Watergate, the original gate, was a deep state factional war in the sense that there were different, the CIA was involved in the break-in, right? Howard Hunt and G. Gordon Liddy and all these guys were ex-CIA, if there's ever such a thing as ex-CIA. And Deep Throat was the deputy FBI director Now, just like the factions of today, I think it was personal as well as political. Mark Felt was leaking partly because Nixon passed him over and didn't make him FBI director. In fact, Nixon thought it was Felt. Nixon was completely correct. He thought Deep Throat was Mark Felt. But he's informing on CIA people or former CIA people breaking into the Democratic headquarters. So even the original gate is a deep state war of sorts between the FBI and the CIA, or at least individuals in the FBI against individuals who are affiliated with the CIA. So it's like same as it ever was type deal.
It's interesting. I was looking through the New York Times video material. They're trying to produce more video material. And from the start of Russiagate, right after the election, the New York Times was working very hard to frame it as Watergate, to frame Trump into a Watergate narrative from the start. And there's a number of, you can see it all over the media. It's part of a messaging thing, but they were determined to make this like a Watergate because, they hadn't prevented him from taking office. They didn't have any legal way to remove him from office. They explored every possible avenue, the anti-Trump factions. And I think they came to the conclusion that they held the dilemma of, if you get rid of Trump, you get Pence, and he's even worse. So the only solution is the Watergate solution, where you somehow force them both to resign,
Yeah, no, I think they wanted to do that. That's like their heart of hearts. The media completely hates Trump, and they're establishment apologists, the mainstream media, or at least the establishment.
Well, they're at war. It's open war right now, right?
Yeah, it's kind of open war. But I also think there's always an interest in sensationalizing everything. They wanted that story. The part that is the screw up was letting this get to this point. Trump blew it. And I'm sure he was publicly sabotaged, I think, from factions within the deep state. I absolutely think John Brennan was part of leaking the Flynn transcript, for example. There's absolutely all sorts of things getting leaked to David Ignatius of the Washington Post. So there is a deep state, if you like, or intelligence agencies, national security state, factional war going on. But the question is, okay, so yes, the New York Times is trying to, yes, the media is trying to destroy Trump, but what can they really do? And what I see is actually a lot of fear and anxiety, because what's interesting, and this should definitely be linked to, is Blake Hochnow, however you say his name, of the Politico magazine
or something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whatever his name is. He published this thing called A Russiagate Skeptic. He was a skeptic of Russiagate in Politico.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And the screams from the partisan hack media.
He said a lot of reporters are skeptics.
Talking Points memo, Josh Marshall went all over it. And what they've done, and this is what you see throughout Russiagate over and over again, is they declare victory. Right? They say, got him. Trump, this is enough to prove collusion. We don't need more collusion. Right? Matt Iglesias says if they all say this. And then it falls flat. People say, nah, that's not really collusion. And so they had to keep extending it. And every new piece, however tenuous, that's the proof. We've already hit the proof. So that's the response to the Politico piece, was to say that, well, we don't need any more than we've already got now. We've already, moving the goalposts, we've already proved collusion. Yeah. It's already been proven.
This is a dirty war that's being fought in the media. And I think the Mueller indictments are designed exactly for that. It's designed for the headlines. And I'm going to put together a little montage of the headlines that came out right after, well-planned headlines came out right after the indictment. They know they're never going to try this in court. So, after the Russiagate circus was under threat by the Memogate thing that really got some traction, and it's based on some actual facts. They came out with this, and this is how they fight. This is how they have fought.
Yeah, no,
start.
Yeah, I agree. The Mueller, in fact, I think the more we get more Nunes memos, we're going to get, which I think they should actually do, because it'll force Mueller to reveal his hand. And I'm sure Mueller is trying to drag this out forever. and the Nunes memo forced him to at least make some of these indictments, or maybe he was going to do it anyway and it forced the timeline up. That's probably more likely. And so just keep releasing these memos so at least he'll get to the end of the road and just make as many indictments as he's going to make. Fine, it's too late. You already set it in motion because Jeff Sessions is a moron. And just get to the end of this. Yeah. Just get to the end of it because it has to end. That's the point. The longer this goes on, the worse it is. What I'm hoping for the outcome is.
But it's a lifeline to certain factions, opportunists who are banking on it, and some others who are using it for their purposes too. I mean, even the Brits are making use of it, right? They're blaming.
Everyone's making use of it. Everyone's playing it. Everyone's going to play with it, which is all the more reason if Trump wasn't as big a fool as Sessions to force Mueller to either, finish his investigation and be done with it. Indict who you're going to indict and be done with it. Now, I think what the interesting thing will be is if we get to the end of this and Mueller doesn't indict Trump or doesn't accuse Trump directly of anything, what happens then?
Well, I don't know. We'll see how this plays out. But the usual reaction to things like this, people like Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Napolitano, and other defenders of Trump, they usually immediately debunk or ridicule, the claims that are made. And now they're usually made by anonymous sources and things like that, or just twisting of the news. But this time they are not doing that. This time they are doing it more like there's been some kind of a deal where, okay, we'll go along with the Russians. We're under attack by the Russians. We'll unite on that narrative, which makes the war party and the intelligence agencies very happy. It restores their credibility. But we're not going along with the Russian collusion by Trump part of the narrative. Now, the Democrats have not conceded that part of it. But, we'll see if others do. The right has definitely taken a different tack. Now, it also remains to be seen, Nunes, the plan that is in Nunes' hands, I don't think he created this plan. I think Sessions and others in the White House and in the agencies are working on building this case against the Democrats and some parts of the intelligence and FBI. They have a plan for going forward with this. They're going after, what did they lay out? Phase 2 is the State Department. And then they also, immediately before the Mueller indictments, it was in the news that they were investigating, that John Brennan was under investigation. And you have to also remember that Cy Hirsch call, that phone call. I'll find a clip of it. He identifies Brennan as a ringleader of the whole Russiagate thing.
I have what they call in my business long-form journalism. I have a narrative of how that whole fucking thing began. It's a Brennan operation. It was an American disinformation, and the fucking president. At one point, when they even started telling the press, they were back briefing the press. The head of the NSA was going and telling the press, this fucking cocksucker Rogers was telling the press that we even know who in the GRU, the Russian Military Intelligence Service, leaked it. I mean, all bullshit. They were telling these. I worked at the New York Times for fucking years, and the trouble with the fucking New York Times is they have smart guys, but they're totally beholden on sources. If the president or the head of the CIA tells them something, they actually believe it. I was hired at the Times to go after the war, in the Vietnam War in '72, because they were just locked in. So that's what the Times is. These guys run the fucking Times. And Trump's not wrong. I wish he would calm down and had a better press secretary. You have to be so. Trump's not wrong to think they all fucking lied about him.
So,
Yeah, I don't think this is going anywhere serious in that regard. I would be amazed if Brennan faced any kind of problems. I think the issue is, when are you going to wrap this up and how long are you going to let it go on? Because it's just, there's no end. I mean, if you want to keep indicting people for ridiculous non sequiturs like Ukraine, I mean, there's nobody who hasn't broken a lot of these rules. Which is a great indictment of Washington. So the real question is, when are they going to force Mueller to finish? Because the longer he keeps this going, the worse it is for all of them. I mean, they should have never let it start, but now that it's started, when's it going to finish?
Well, in Rosenstein's statement, he gives a sense that this is going to continue. He gives no sense that this is going to.
Well, here's the thing. If there's a deal, like you're saying, they made a deal that, we're going to acknowledge Russian aggression in exchange for no collusion. Well, okay, that's a deal then. So what's the deal on the other side? That they're going to stop the investigation, right? Otherwise, why would you make a deal?
That's where my theory falls apart.
Right. I was going to say, if they made a deal, then why isn't the probe getting closed down? So I don't think there's a deal. I think they're maybe playing Trump, and he's so easy to play on this stuff because he doesn't have any real strategic. He just kind of smashes things.
Well, I don't necessarily think. I think the core players maybe made this deal, but the opportunists around it certainly wouldn't have agreed to that. That's pretty clear.
But what's even the point of this? Like, what's even the point of this probe? Unless they're actually going to indict Trump, in which case he'll fight it and go nuts. I mean, that's the other thing. Trump is not going to do a Nixon. He's not going to resign. He's just going to pardon himself, and he'll probably be vindictive and pardon everybody else and call the whole thing fake news, which they have to know. Like, this Trump is not – he's not shameable, which is his strength in Washington, is that he's totally shameless. He's not even – most people in Washington are mostly shameless. He's completely shameless. So in the event that they, indicted him or did something or wanted him for obstruction, he'll just say "fuck you" and start a war. In which case, he'll pardon everybody and he'll smash the FBI, or at least he'll try. I mean, it's they know they're set him off if they actually did indict him, or probably someone in his family. They may be looking at Don Jr. for that Russia-Trump Tower meeting. That'll set him off. Kushner. They don't know what he'll do next, and so I just wonder if this hasn't played itself out enough already for them to call it quits. I wonder what happens next.
So some of the things I'm referring to, the change of tone, like here's Hannity.
It does not say that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians. It does not say that anybody on the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. It does not say that President Trump obstructed justice. Now, what this indictment shows is nothing short of a sophisticated effort by the Russians to gain influence in America.
And he goes on about Russia. And also Napolitano is another tell. This is the same guy who exposed the fact that John Brennan was working with the Brits to get intel on the Trump campaign. He's not inclined to do this, but listen to what he does.
It is a felony for a foreign national to become involved in an American campaign. It is a felony for a foreign national to contribute anything of value to a campaign. And it is a felony for any American to help a foreign national to do so. That is what Mueller is looking for. That is what my colleagues in the media call collusion, even though the law calls it conspiracy. There's no way that a conspiracy as vast as the one outlined in the indictment returned last week could have happened without the Kremlin itself approving it and paying for it.
So
let's be clear. The Brennan British thing wasn't proven, and the idea that there's no way. The idea that the shitposting on Twitter and Facebook, I would think the Kremlin would be a little bit more ambitious. I'm not saying the guy who was behind it didn't do it to curry favor maybe with Putin or to, have something to laugh about because they're apparently close and they have dinner and whatnot. But it didn't really, most of it happened after the election and it didn't affect really any votes. So I would like to think that, I always thought the accusations about the DNC hack were at least, a foreign intelligence agency. But the idea that the Kremlin ordered shit posting of Buff Bernie, even if they did, I wouldn't care. But it's like, what?
Yeah, I also read something about someone who had looked into this organization. This note they're using the acronym IRA too, just to give it a scary veneer. But that this internet research agency, the company became defunct some years ago, and the various business registration processes in Russia. I need to read some more about that and talk to some people and see if there's anything to that. But I also heard an ex-CIA guy say, the quality of this stuff, how can you say that the Russian intelligence are these super efficient, dangerous entity and then produce this kind of work? He said they'd be laughed out of the international intelligence community.
It does look like a social media campaign. It looks like a kind of,
Well, they did. It was in the indictment. I think they acknowledged that, they would create Twitter and Facebook accounts and then try to attract, get lots of followers. And then they would actually get paid by the tweet.
It's a click farm.
Yeah. If you have
it stole our innovation.
If you have an account with lots of followers, you can sell your services.
Oh, it's like celebrities, like these Twitter celebrities who, they'll push your product placement onto sponsored tweets.
It's the same as paying for ads on a network. You're going to, they pay for the fact they have a lot of viewers. It's really the same model, isn't it?
Yeah. They called it this very sophisticated intelligence operation.
But the Cold War part of this, Dan, is very serious, And here I got Max Blumenthal Max and Aaron Mate are doing just yeoman's work on this, and they're like a voice in the wilderness, but they ring true to me. And first of all, he explains a little bit about the guy who owned and ran this internet research agency.
Well, first of all, this indictment tells us how thin Mueller's evidence is. I know that might sound absurd to people who've been watching wall-to-wall coverage of this on MSNBC and CNN, but this is an indictment of 13 employees of a troll farm in St. Petersburg run by a literal hot dog salesman who has no established or proven connection to Russian intelligence or the Russian government. It was an extremely sloppy operation that is has even been identified in the Mueller indictment, as you said, as at least partly commercial operation.
Yeah, so, he starts off with that, but two things can be true. It can be ridiculous. The charges can be ridiculous and just a headline circus trial by public opinion, which is clearly what the Mueller indictments, that's what he knows it's never going to court, so it's being tried in the media. And there are only still allegations, too. Like even Rosenstein said, this stuff has to be proven. I don't know how much evidence there is, and there's a lot of lawyers arguing about whether these charges are even would hold up and whether it could be proved in a court of law.
Defrauding the Federal Election Commission.
Yeah, that's a conversation of its own. There's so much irony in that one, But at the same time, this can still be a really dangerous situation, and that's what he touches on just a little bit later.
And so we've seen Bernie Sanders put on the record, asked to denounce Russian support for himself, which is absolutely absurd. Bernie Sanders thrived off of a real grassroots base, and Bernie Sanders himself is experiencing blowback for feeding into the Russiagate narrative. He's constantly parroting this very narrative that's being turned on him. Jill Stein is also under attack again now because of the Mueller indictment. And we also have to keep in mind that Black Lives Matter was a thorn in Hillary Clinton's side. She was interrupted at campaign fundraisers, at events. Her husband, Bill Clinton, was interrupted because of their role in massively expanding the federal prison system, in eliminating welfare as we know it. And so there's an effort in undermining Black Lives Matter by tying them to a Russian influence operation. Everyone on the left has to be extremely aware of what's happening here, and they need to mount a united front against Russiagate because, as I said at the beginning, just as in the old Cold War, a new Cold War will embolden the most militaristic actors in our society and marginalize everyone on the left by design. With this Mueller indictment, we are seeing that scenario play out in an extremely terrifying fashion with very little pushback from the institutional left.
Yeah, as often happens, Max solidifies my thoughts and fears in better ways than I can say it. But as absurd as all of this is, it's also extremely dangerous. I also liked what Jimmy Dore said. Max sees the Democratic establishment's hands in all of this, and of course, we all do. But Jimmy Dore actually boils it down pretty well, too.
Democrats nominated Hillary Clinton, who already lost to Barack Obama 8 years earlier, and half the country on no circumstance would vote for. And they lost to an orange clown game show host, and then they blamed another country.
So you, like we were saying before, there are different, this serves different purposes. It's, but like you said, you have Max Boot talking about 9/11, and you have this Nadler guy who I always thought was a fairly reasonable, I think he was part of the Progressive Caucus. He's a congressman in New York City too, I think, although I'm not.
He's always been kind of a creep, to be honest.
Well, listen to what he says to Chris Hayes.
This is absolute proof of what we knew all along and what the president has denied, namely that we were attacked. This was a very serious attack against the United States by a hostile foreign power, an attack against our election process, our entire governing process. We know that the attack is continuing and that our intelligence agencies tell us that it's going to certainly continue through the next election. And the president and the Republicans in the House, for that matter, refuse to do anything about protecting us from an attack. Imagine if FDR had denied that the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor and didn't react. That's the equivalent.
Well, it's a bit of a different thing.
No, it's not.
They didn't kill anyone.
They didn't kill anyone, but they're destroying our country.
Do you really think it's on? You think it's on par?
Not in the amount of violence, but I think in the seriousness, it is very much on par. This country exists to have a democratic system with a small d.
That's where these guys are going, and certain talking points are coming
ridiculous.
Like listen to Lawrence O'Donnell.
The first president of the United States who has had to deal with the aftermath of a direct attack on the United States by Russia.
God.
And because Donald Trump is the weakest president in history, and because Donald Trump lives either in fear of Russia or in service to Russia, or both, Donald Trump continues to do absolutely nothing in response to the Russian attack.
So they grab on the Cold War thing, and they just tack on their own.
Lawrence O'Donnell promised that Donald Trump was not running for president on his program, that it was all a publicity stunt and he wouldn't actually run for president.
Yeah. But he's got his
guy is a total flake.
He's working the Democratic agenda, and then you have Joy Reid. She's working the Democratic establishment agenda too, but she's also, the big media fight back and redemption or revenge. And she's big on this is not a hoax. Here she goes.
It's a hoax.
On Friday, that myth came crashing to a halt when Special Counsel Robert Mueller indicted 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian entities on charges that included conspiracy to defraud the United States. The explosive new charges are laid out in a 37-page indictment that details how a covert Russian operation aimed to impact voters in the United States, using social media posts and ads, organized political rallies, and fictitious American persons to denigrate Hillary Clinton, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio, and to support Bernie Sanders, Green Party candidate Jill Stein, and then candidate Donald Trump. In other words, we now have a court document with names, dates, and details offering real, clear-cut proof that Russian interference is not hoax. It's not fake news, despite Trump's repeated claims that the interference story was cooked up by the, quote, dishonest media.
It's fake news.
It should be noticed. Is there anything in this indictment that begins to prove that this Internet Research Agency was the Russians, the Russian government?
No. Nothing has been proven. I mean, these people just, like I said, they don't have the law. They don't have the facts. They're just pounding the table. They don't have it. They want you to believe they have it because they've invested so much time and effort. But there's nothing there. I mean, this is just a disaster. Like these people, I hate MSNBC. What has it become? It's been it's terrible.
And people who are going through the actual data. The things that were posted by these 13 Russians. I mean, it's crazy.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
A lot of it has nothing to do with Trump at all or Hillary. A whole lot of it happened after the election. Some of it, there was some anti-Trump in there stuff too. mean, it looks like people who got paid by all,
It looks like trolling. It looks like
stuff out for anyone who would pay them.
Low rent trolling, and that's exactly what it was. This is supposed to be the smoking gun. It's just such.
But you see how they turned it into the smoking gun with the headlines. Like 90
Who believes them? That's the other thing. That's the thing we have to really wonder. Yes, the mainstream media are liars, but who believes them? That's my question. Is there anybody left? If so, then that's a problem, because we need people to stop believing these liars.
Partisans believe them when it confirms their bias. They selectively believe them.
Yeah, but
but overall, you're right. There's an extreme lack of trust in this media, and
thank God.
But they're shutting up. They're not shutting up. In some cases, they are shutting up, but they're suppressing alternative media where people could, actually get a different point of view. Yeah, I had another point on that. Now I can't remember it.
Well, they keep. Their only power is just to keep repeating this lie over and over again, and they're hoping it just wears people down. It's like a 24-hour propaganda effort. But that's the point. That's the reason, like I said, Trump and co. just need to get this thing over. That's like the fact that they're letting this go on and on and on is what's killing them. Every day, it's just this endless repetition of this conspiracy theory. And it doesn't, yes, there's nothing there, but they're so desperate for news. We indicted people for shit posting on Facebook. Oh, this is it. This is the final puzzle piece. So the longer, I agree, it's going to affect people just because it's always in the atmosphere. Although I have to say that there's also a real threat of overdoing it. That's it. You can't hit the panic button every day. People just stop paying attention. So,
yeah, but apparently it's been over the top for a year, more than a year.
Well, I think it just has to end. The longer it goes on, the more damage it's going to do. They just have to end it.
Well, what if they all agree that it's useful for trying to put Russia back in their place, the way they see it? That Russia is impeding their goals in the Middle East and elsewhere.
Their goals in the Middle East, good Lord.
It's justifying massive, massive increases in military spending.
Yeah, but Trump is going to do that anyway, wasn't he?
God only knows what types of directives, covert directives are being written.
I think this is partly being driven by the Democratic Party. Now, it's important to remember the MSNBC is the equivalent to Democrats what Fox News is Republicans. It's a partisan network. So MSNBC and some of these people are pushing this because they want to take back Congress in 2018. That's why I'm saying. That's why we said earlier, if this fails, if the Republicans hold on to the House and the Senate, I don't know what these people are going to do, because they're going to be told, because then all this was for naught from their perspective. Their whole perspective is Democratic partisan hackery. So the whole point is to win these elections and take back Congress, which they might do, by the way. But in the event they don't, I don't know what they do. And in the event they do, they'll keep pushing it because they'll try to use it as grounds to impeach Trump, mostly for the same political hackneyed reasons the Republicans tried to impeach Bill Clinton. So this is what yet another reason Trump and co. should just be like, we got to end this thing now.
This is There's just no a little.
Here. There's nothing at stake. I think this is what we should say, because people might be listening to this and be like, well, you're thinking of it in these terms of what about the truth? Truth has nothing to do with Russiagate. Nothing. Nothing.
It's divorced from the truth.
It's completely divorced from the truth. Nobody is out to find the truth of what happened. That's what I mean. So it's a political football from start to finish. There's no truth. There's no progress from it. It's not going to help stop election meddling in the future, which, given the broad terms they consider election meddling, is eternal, because they consider any foreign comment on a political process meddling. So there's no truth in Russiagate. There's nothing at stake. That's what I think people need to understand. And that's what they keep trying to change. That's why they keep saying things like we're under attack. It's 9/11, because they keep trying to up the stakes. What people who understand what's going on should keep saying is, don't worry, there's nothing at stake. Nothing that happened or related to Russiagate matters. They didn't affect the election outcome. They don't have the ability to do that, even if they were trying to.
this has no real stakes outside of elite political gamesmanship. So if you're worried about Russiagate, please understand there are stakes like in the ancillary aspect of this, people trying to, manipulate other people in America. But in terms of the actual underlying quote unquote crime, there's nothing at stake. There's no problem. Nothing that happened undermines our democracy. What's happening in the wake of this political tug of war and warfare in Washington is undermining our democracy. But the actual thing of either the DNC leaks, which are suspect if that was Russia or not, we don't know, or shit posting on Facebook, buff Bernie, this has in no way undermined our democracy. It has no real impact. There's nothing been proven that has any stake. So the truth is not even in play.
There's one guy who's gotten through on the media, gotten into the mainstream media, who has said something similar to that. And his name is Adrian Chen. And of course, now he's taken a lot of heat. He also wrote, this guy exposed and wrote about the Internet Research Agency, I think 3 years ago.
Right.
And because of that, Chris Hayes had him on. And here's a quick clip of what he said about the whole situation.
Well, the effectiveness question, which everybody's talking about now, it's of my personal belief that it isn't all of that effective. It's essentially a social media marketing campaign with 90 people, a couple $1 million, few $1 million behind it, run by people who have, a bare grasp of the English language and not a full understanding of who they're targeting, what they're targeting. I think if you think about that in terms of just a normal marketing campaign, that's not going to be a very good bang for your buck. I think that the paranoia aspect, right? The idea that there is this, kind of all-powerful or immense propaganda machine that's going on, and that anybody who's tweeting something that you don't like or is, kind of causing trouble on the internet can be chalked up to Russia. That is a very powerful thing that's going on and is really increasing now, I think, in the wake of these indictments in kind of a worrying way. There's not a lot of people saying, well, let's hold back, maybe it's not all of that big of a deal.
So,
a voice of reason, a moment of reason in the 2 minutes of hate. What's going on here?
A complete rarity.
Oh, he must be getting screamed at on Twitter. R.I.P. my mentions.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, there's one more thing we got to talk about, and that is the
yum 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 yum.
Yeah, I mean that is just amazing. It's sort of like
I can hear that clip a million times. Let's play it again.
It's it's so perfect. Yeah. Anyway, for anybody, I'm sure most people have heard about this already, but this is James Woolsey. He's a former CIA director under Bill Clinton. And he's with Laura Ingraham, who now has a show on Fox News.
Oh, God, does she? Again?
Oh, my God. It's really bad.
Who did she replace? O'Reilly?
I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the time slots, but she's later on in the night. I've never watched her show, but I've watched video clips of it.
Okay.
And this one's really kind of gone viral.
It may not have affected the outcome of the 2016 election, but the Russians were able to pull off a wide-ranging, aggressive, and brazen attempt to interfere in the campaign. So can our intelligence agencies stop them from doing it again? Let's ask an old friend, former CIA director, Jim Woolsey. Jim, it's great to have you on. Thanks for being here tonight. This is wild. I mean, this indictment today was wild. I mean, they were organizing all sorts of things. They were working for that Jill Stein, trying to help her. They were anti-Trump and pro-Trump on one day after the election. What's that all about?
They want to be a force, and they want to disrupt things. They call their big overall program disinformation. And they've been doing this since the 1920s, 1930s. What's new is that they do it with cyber. But they didn't have much luck disrupting American elections back in the 1930s or 1940s. But they've been doing that to other countries all along. Ian Mihai Pacepa, the head of Romanian intelligence who defected in 1979, says that there are more Russians involved in disinformation than there are in their armed forces. I think what we really want is to get them to start pulling in their horns and coming back out of Georgia, back out of Ukraine. We need them. We need to turn them around because they are taking over, even with their military and other inadequacies. They are taking over a lot more of Eurasia than they should, and it gives them heart as they take more and more under their wing.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably. But it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example, in Europe, in 47, 48, 49, the Greeks and the Italians, we
don't do that now, though. We don't mess around other people's elections.
Only for a very good cause.
Can you do that? Do a Vine video on this former CIA?
Only for a very good cause in the interests of democracy.
All right, thanks for being here.
Oh my God! And Laura Ingraham, just a little side note. She's so internet savvy that she didn't even know that Vine is obsolete.
Yeah, Vine's gone.
It's been gone for what?
Badly,
2 years?
by the way. I say that sadly because I loved Vine, but let me tell you, that clip is so good. It's almost worth it to have Russiagate that prompted it. That's how good that clip is. Yum 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 yum.
Yeah.
Are we doing it now? I don't understand. Is he eating someone's democracy? I don't understand what that even is. Yum yum yum. But oh god, that is so good. I've watched that probably.
Yeah, it's even better to watch him. Watch him say it. It's
because he actually licks his lips. Yum 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 yum.
And how joyous she is to be back in line with the revered and godfathers of the intelligence agency now.
Yum, yum,
the
yum,
right
yum,
was
yum.
very uncomfortable criticizing the FBI and so on. But
yeah, Russia are the bad guys again. They're back on the Mitt Romney clique. They're back on the narrative. And I wonder if the deep state, or if you like, the people looking at this are kind of like, okay, maybe we should cut this out now. This is kind of where we want to be. I remember Mike Morell, side note, did an interview with Politico, Susan Glasser, and said that he kind of understood that he kind of screwed up. That he could, if he were Trump, he would have seen a CIA deep state plot, given that Mike Morell, had written this op-ed and was supporting Hillary, and that they had probably kind of blown it a little bit. And I wonder if they're thinking, okay, I mean, I don't know if they could stop this train if they wanted to. I don't even know if there's a they as much as it is just
an awful lot of people have gotten on that train and hooked up their
it might be a little too hard to stop now. But this is probably kind of where they wanted to be. And if they overreach again, it's going to get crazy. So I don't know, but I just love that clip.
Look at the foreign policy shifts that Trump has made.
Yeah, Tillerson.
Yeah, it's almost like, Tillerson did a complete about face on Syria. And, it's almost like finally somebody decided to manipulate Trump efficiently. What does he want more than anything else right now? I would say that he wants redemption. He wants to be cleared of this. He wants people to stop. He wants the whole Russiagate nightmare that he's lived through for the past year to stop. And
that's right. And if the deep state were as disciplined, if there was such a thing as a collective deep state, which I don't think there is, I think there's factions.
Yeah, I think they're
going war with each other. It's a euphemism to call it a deep state. But I think if Mueller goes after his family, I think all bets are fucking off. He might start a war. He might fire people like you've never seen firing before. Tremendous firing. I think like this right now where they've got him right where they want him and they could call this a win. They've got the Republicans back. I think you're right about that. They've got like if there was such a collective omniscient they, which there isn't. This is
even
kind
just
of
a hierarchy of power.
Yeah, this is perfect, right? This particular situation, the country's scared shitless of Russia. Some people are, at least. They got both parties are back in line with imperialism and Russia as the foreign threat. This is actually a really good moment from where they were after Trump defeated Clinton running on an anti-establishment, anti-imperialistic, like indirectly program. Like they've kind of got, this is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
But it won't last because they can't stop the train because there's just too many people invested in destroying the Trump administration, rightly or wrongly. Some for the right reasons, some for the wrong reasons. And this is just going to keep going. And I think the minute this gets close to home, I don't think he gives a shit about Paul Manafort at all.
Paul can go to jail for the rest of his life. He doesn't care. He fired him. I don't think he
they're
cares
worried
about
their integrity and legitimacy, right? They still.
No, I don't think he cares about that. I think he's Flynn. He might pardon Flynn. I think I could absolutely see Flynn getting pardoned. But I think if he indicts, if Mueller indicts Trump Jr. for that Trump Tower meeting, I think it's going to go. I think it's going to get wild.
He's got access to all the crown jewels and things now too, and all the information. Presumably, he does.
He's too dumb to use it, though. He needs some killers in there who know how to use it, because he doesn't. If he was smart enough to use that information, he would have been smart enough to make sure Mueller didn't get in this position. I don't think Trump. I think Trump has great intuition. I don't think he's a strategic. I think he's somewhat a strategic, but I don't think he's playing at the level that if he right. I mean, if someone who knew how to use that information was in there, he probably could have dispatched Brennan and these other guys. I mean, Brennan has his hands all over the torture thing. Whereas that could have gotten leaked. Right? Here's this guy, he was involved in spying on the Senate. Remember that story? People forgot about that story, right? When the Senate was doing the torture report and the CIA was caught spying on Senate computers.
He made a total mess of Syria.
If Trump knew what he was doing, he would have already, kneecapped these guys. I just think he'll just rage out if Trump Jr. gets indicted to the point where he could start smashing stuff, and he'll say, I don't care, because I don't think he really cares that much. I mean, I think he cares about the country in some sort of general sense, but it's all about Trump name and the Trump family. I mean, look at how much of a liability Kushner is, and he won't get rid of him. So, and that's right. And that was kind of Steve Bannon's fatal mistake, who, by the way, in the midst of all this stuff in the book with Mike Wolfe, Steve Bannon has completely immolated his career. He's not only out of the White House, he's been fired from Breitbart.
Yeah, he's done. It was very clear he was done.
Yeah, and his big mistake was going up against, quote unquote, Javanka, Jared and Ivanka, because Trump is always family-based. So I just think, I agree with you that this is a good convergence for them. This is the sweet spot, but it won't last. And if Mueller keeps going and actually ties in one of the Trump children, which I think once again, I said there's no truth in Russiagate. It's kind of bull. But in the event that he indicts Trump Jr., I could see Donald Trump doing something crazy and absolutely pulling the temple down, which is not what they want. They want him contained. They like him right where he is right now. He's doing everything they want him to do.
Well, did you see his tweet after the Mueller indictments came out? He goes after Russia too.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. This is exactly what they want. This is what they want.
And Woolsey tells you what they're trying to do. They're trying to rein Russia in. Russia is he conflates the Soviet Union and Russia too.
No, but that sounds like the Brzezinski plan, right? We want them out of Ukraine. We want them out of Georgia. Russia without Ukraine is just another country. It's not an empire. I mean, that sounds like
near
Brzezinski
abroad.
to me.
It's not. They're near abroad can't be considered their circle of influence.
Right. So
other countries get that, but Russia has denied that. They're not allowed to have any influence have any circle of influence. That's been openly stated by the McCain crew. But, there are a lot of similarities to the lead up to the Iraq invasion, the post 9/11.
Yeah, but
build up.
We're in the post-Iraq world, aren't we? That's the thing. I mean, we're in the post-Iraq world, no matter how, and plus it's very partisan. I don't know if that'll save us or not.
Well, what can save the empire? What could possibly save the empire?
Nothing.
How about a world war? How about a world war?
With who? World war with who? Nobody wants this. I think I agree that the people who are interested in this want to preserve the empire. They want to find some way to keep American supremacy, a unipolar world with America calling all the shots. But history is just not going to allow that to happen. The question is, how much are they going to fight history?
Well, the people who have those beliefs had a total victory after 9/11 with the Iraq invasion and the destabilization of the whole region, and that made absolutely no sense either. So,
but here I agree with you what you're saying, but we're now in the post-Iraq world, which means they don't have the kind of currency anymore. Also, they've also, by the way, completely exhausted the military resources. They've had people do, so on one logistical There's not a real military ground force. Like, let's say where this would play out, which is not a nuclear war with Russia, but let's say it's a war with Iran, which is what I think is legitimate, or correspondingly a war with North Korea, which of course actually you wouldn't need ground troops because it would be a nuclear war, right? But a war with Iran,
all have the potential to go to a nuclear war. I mean, we have people who believe we could win a first strike nuclear war.
But
what if you demonize the country before you first strike them?
Well, but a war with Iran is something, a ground war is real possible. That's why we're doing the permanent thing in Syria. I mean, if this thing gets started, what are the odds the American people are going to get in line? See, they've undermined Trump so much, no one will trust him with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, under him it would be very difficult, but
it'd be worse than under Bush. I mean, Bush lost support for the Iraq War very quickly. Compare the loss of public support for the Iraq War to the loss of public support for Vietnam. It's light years faster in political terms for Bush. What would it be under Trump?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I just don't think they have the currency or the legitimacy to do it. But I agree they're angling. I mean, they're doing everything they can to angle for a war with Iran. But
I'm not as confident as you are, though. I take heart by the fact that you are confident. But no offense, but I'm not comforted by it. I'm a tiny bit comforted by it. I'm hoping you're right, but all the sirens are going off that we're in major trouble, and maybe there's only one way to fix it in these people's minds, maniacal minds, and I should say.
Well,
anyway, we're
on
probably
on the positive note, if I'm wrong, we'll all be dead anyway. So you won't be here to say I told you so. And on that note, thank you so much for listening. That's our show. Please check us out, aroundtheempire.com. You can support our Patreon, patreon.com/aroundtheempire. Follow us on Twitter @aroundtheempire. Follow Joanne on Twitter @Joanne Leon, Leon. Follow me @US Empire Show. Questions, comments, want to yell at me, Dan @aroundtheempire.com. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page.
And also, if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, it's free to do that. There's a red subscribe button. We need some more followers to be able to live stream with the Super Chat. So we'd appreciate that.
And see you next time.
Thanks so much. Good night, everyone.